Awesome. We are recording and we are live. Welcome, folks. I'm Coach Jeremy, joined by a great group of coaches today. Some new faces, some returning faces. Always good to have a mix of experience here. And so far, no one has volunteered a topic. So I'm going to bring one up that may make some folks clench their butt cheeks a little bit, but hopefully just a little bit. Not enough to actually run out of the room screaming. But I want to know, how are you getting uncomfortable as a professional? As I mentioned before we hit record, uh, change and the change process is often uncomfortable. It's a discussion that we have with our clients often. We help to guide and support them through those things. Uh, I want to know, how does that apply to you as a professional, as a developing coach or a coach who is working on their business? What are some elements that you find to be uncomfortable right now? How are you working towards breaking down some of those barriers, expanding your comfort? And you have your hand up.
Me. All right.
Okay, found it.
So I started a therapist like in the springtime. I had finished PN2.
Mhm.
It was fabulous. And I think when that was done, the void that the stress left, I crashed
Interesting.
and it didn't go away.
Mhm.
It just stayed and stayed. Um, I was abused growing up, so
Mhm.
there's like some very real trauma. And I think through part of PN, I stopped the stress management, sleep, and recovery
Mhm.
um, to do the PN L2. So I'll come back to that
Yeah.
later. But in that I had learned, or in both of them, I had learned that you have uh, you generally pick one form of what you do when something happens to you, when you're stressed. And I'm a freezer. I just,
Mhm.
I just can't, I just can't do anything. Like I just stand there frozen. And I realized how much that affects me professionally.
Mhm.
Because you can't make a decision. You just sit there frozen when something's very stressful or uncomfortable. And for me, I just celebrated 10 years at the same gym that I'm a personal trainer there, and that's good, but I'm stale.
Mhm.
I saw my pay actually go down, and that's my top line.
Mhm.
um, and even in therapy, I talked about that to the my counselor, and I'm at the gym I'm at. I charge $55 an hour. I only get 60% of that.
Mhm.
So I started thinking, how many hours do I have to work? And it's not near my house. So I've got to leave myself a half hour to get there. So I
Right.
started looking at it and I'm like, I have so much unpaid time. This is ridiculous. And my therapist said, well, you know, it's okay to want to be paid for your skills. You know, it's okay to say, I want to help those people that can't afford it, but it's not helpful when you're exhausted because you're up at 4 in the morning and you're still working at 8 at night with gaps throughout the day. So I talked to somebody at a gym that's like zero point 0.6 miles from my house. Like I could run there in 10 minutes. Yeah, or less, way less. 10 minutes in
As a
ice.
non-runner, impressive. I'm still impressed, but continue.
Um, so I had that first discussion. We're going to have another discussion in February, and I'm going to finally start my own business.
That is
Um,
fantastic.
and it's super uncomfortable. Part of my problem is I part of I have multiple. I mean, I am very afraid of not being good enough
Mhm.
and being exposed for that and failure, you know? Um, but at the other hand, it, you have to get uncomfortable. So I'm also doing, and this is really stressful too. I am doing my first dance competition. I'm 63 years old, so they have an age category. This is it'll be
Would
lyrical.
okay. Yeah, I'm
Okay,
unfamiliar with that discipline. It doesn't immediately paint a picture in my head, but
it's like ballet, but more angular, kind of like
okay,
contemporary dance.
fair. Do you have a partner or will you be kind of competing
No,
solo?
solo.
Wow, that's
Yeah, so
very
it's not like
exposed.
ballroom. It's
Mhm.
staged. I teach ballet there. So
Oh,
it makes it
amazing.
kind of worse too, because it's like I carry the studio name. Our
Mhm.
studio will be there. The kids competed there for many, many years. But because dance competitions started much after like the time I would have been dancing in college by the time they came out.
Gotcha.
So it's a
Okay.
thing of not my era.
Right.
So I decided to do this. So I'm going as a solo in it. And so the aging brain, when agitated,
Mhm.
could completely forget choreography. And I could be standing up on the stage frozen. Um, but yeah, I paid my entry fees and my students know, and like for me to cut out would be horrible. So
I see Kate's comment below there. That was actually my first instinct as well, was not just the aging brain. The human brain definitely does that. A
yes,
brain feeling kind of that fight or flight response, which you mentioned earlier, uh,
yeah,
can often feel like it's short wiring in the
yeah,
moment. Um, but yeah, I'm bringing up this topic today. I feel like you are the perfect person to jump in there to get us kicked off. You really are speed running discomfort, it sounds like, for 2025.
yes.
Uh, one of the things I'm curious about is you mentioned kind of our L2 program that you've successfully completed at this time. And it left a kind of a hole in your life, and you felt like you just kind of crashed after that. So I would assume that it was quite engaging, really high levels of arousal and participation on your part. Uh, is that kind of what left that hole?
Um, I had a lot of other things that came up, like where I had to uh recertify.
Mhm.
I had to um for PN by the end of December as I'm going through, finishing that
Right.
up. And then I had to get CEUs for Medical Fitness Network.
Gotcha.
So, like, I had these, you know, plus my own, teaching dance, and I have to choreograph dances for each of the classes and recital. So it was just a lot. And like, just the gym stress with just a lot of things going on, with online training and people like actually not training with the trainer at the gym, my demographic, which tends to be older.
Mhm.
Um, and just a lot to go. And oh, awesome. Yeah, L2 was awesome.
Mhm.
Um, and then I had to get my 50 hours in and get all that done too.
So you're
And
also working on the NBHWC certification as well.
I am.
Gotcha.
Um,
Okay.
I couldn't, and I chose not to do it in the springtime, like
Mhm.
2 weeks before I go on stage
Yeah,
for
which is
company.
maybe reasonable, and hopefully something that working with a
Yeah,
counselor helps you kind of understand. Where's my current extended version of me, or that limitation for yourself?
yeah,
Because yeah, it definitely sounds like you had a lot on the go for a significant amount of time. So feeling that burden eventually catch up to you is a very real
yeah,
thing. I'm glad to see you didn't you were able to heed the warning instead of keep moving head first through all the adversity.
Yeah. And it's kind of like they had, I think Don had talked about her, it's in there, coach, know thyself. What are
Mhm,
your, triggers, emotional triggers from my past growing up, my fears. Um, and just now I can see them in other people, and it's like I don't have to react to them. I don't have to relive my personal, experiences, which is super important
mhm.
as a
Right.
coach, you know.
Mhm.
Um,
Being able to create that separation there is very useful.
right. So, oh, it's kind of it.
I mean, yeah, we won't downplay it because that is a significant amount of discomfort there. That some of it is self-selected, some of it is from previous experience. Some of it, I'm glad to see you were also able to defer and say, hey, you know what? I can focus on what's on my plate currently. Even though it sounds like it was a little bit overflowing, you didn't continue to pile it on there. You did check in. And I'm also glad to see that you were able to get support for yourself as well. We
Yeah.
approach so many of these conversations from the perspective of a coach supporting others. Always useful to remember that getting support for ourselves is incredibly useful, no matter what form it comes in, whether that's a coach that's helping you with your own fitness and wellness, a counselor helping you to kind of observe and explore the mental landscape before you, or in other areas where it's like, hey, I can just use some stuff off my plate right now. So, uh, really glad to see that you are exploring some of that discomfort and embracing some of it as well. When is your competition?
It'll be the weekend of April 4th.
Amazing. Well, then I hope we get an update in the near future
Yeah.
about how preparation is going, and then eventually you can come on and share your winner's medal or a
Yeah.
participation ribbon. It's all good at this point.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anne.
You're welcome.
Anyone else care to share how they are either micro or macro dosing some discomfort recently or something they have lined up for the near future?
I definitely feel this whole thing has been stressful. I'm a nurse by trade,
Mhm.
and while that is challenging, you go in and they kind of orient you to what you're doing and you just kind of learn it. And I'm trying to orient myself to this. And on top, like I feel pretty confident about the coaching part. And I'm really good with talking with people and I'm used to that kind of thing and problem solving as a from the medical field. Um, but every time I turn around, I feel like I have another computer hurdle to get through, some sort of
Ah,
technology, like, okay, figure this out. And then I'm like, okay, well, now I got that. Now I need a landing page. Okay, well, now I have to figure out how to work that. And then I have to, decipher all of this technology and terminology. I'm like, what is a landing page or what's there's all these terms that I just don't even know. And really have zero interest in. So I'm not going to lie. So I just feel just frustrated and I go back to my comfort zone of what I know, and that's nursing. And I'm like, but that's not what I want for my life. Well, why isn't it? And
mhm.
you kind of have to remind yourself why you transition to coaching. And it just feels like a really big hurdle to actually start coaching. So,
That is very fair. And I mean, I think one of the key elements that you bring up there is understanding what present discomfort am I willing to trade for potential future discomfort? And there's probably even some items sprinkled in along the way there. So you've noticed that in your career, there are some elements that kind of don't jive with what you want for yourself and what you want for your future. And you can maintain that system and maintain that current discomfort. And the good news is, like, at least you kind of know what it is. It's familiar discomfort, which has some benefits to it. Uh, on the other side, there is a career that you feel more driven towards, conversations that you want to be having as a professional, uh, and that kind of valley in between is the great unknown where you have to tackle and learn some things and gain some new skills, including learning what a landing page is. If you look in the chat box there, Kate was saying maybe we can be the day for you to help answer some of those questions. So by all means, lean on the PN community for these things as much as possible. There, I assure you, if there are questions you have as starting out in your fitness on the business side of things, we have folks who have tackle those things, who are either tackling them right now and learning them alongside you, and we can definitely collaborate to help with some of those things. Uh, I could potentially solve one of those problems for you right away. If you are using Pro Coach, we have a landing page that is built out for you already. Uh, it is not super customizable, but it is a good enough approach where at this kind of the infancy of building a coaching business, I think it will cover about 80% of people fairly well. So if you have a Pro Coach trial that you've already started, click on the Your Pro Coach button on that kind of, it is on the menu bar that's at the top. And you can see a landing page that is already built out for you. It gives people an opportunity to kind of read a little bit about you, click a link to start an email thread with you. And I've been using it since 2016, and pretty much up until this year, I've found that it's done a good enough job.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
cool. So yeah, I did get the trial and I did find that I guess it's so one thing is all of this office work, shall we say, I'm making zero money on. So that's very difficult for me to feel like I'm just working and working and working with to no
yeah.
avail. So the reason I wanted this landing page or whatever you call it is I wanted to like give out a freebie to grow my email, you know? And so then I downloaded the Pro Coach and I'm like, okay, I'm doing this trial, but I have no clients. So how can I support the $100 a month and continue
Right.
to justify that expense? And then I'm like, okay, well now if I'm not going to
Hopefully we get Heather back in a second. Uh, I'll share this with Heather as well later on, but if you have the Pro Coach trial and you are not currently working with
doing
clients, there
business
is,
is
oh,
is that reasonable, you know?
sorry, Heather, you blinked out there for a short second.
Oh,
So
whoops, sorry.
I lost you at the part where you said, I started the Pro Coach trial, but I'm not working with clients currently. And
Yeah,
then there
so
was about a 30-second gap there.
yeah, so not understanding business, how
Mm,
much is a reasonable outgoing expense when you're not having any income expense? You know, like
gotcha.
it's very um I'm very hesitant because I'm not sure what that looks like and I'm not a business person. So yeah.
Heather, can I
Fair.
ask a question here?
Yeah.
Or perhaps we'll get to a question in a second. I guess what I'm trying to get at here, when you are talking about not having any clients right now and being hesitant and like how much money is a reasonable amount of money for me to invest or spend before I really see any payoff? If that is the question that we're trying to answer, and I think we can right off the bat say, it depends because it's going to depend on the person. What it will depend on is your individual risk tolerance and also things like just kind of a particular um, place of privilege as well, right? Like somebody might have savings, somebody might have a partner with a really well-established job, right? Like there's going to be all those factors as well. I think you can try and figure out for yourself what that number is. I heard you say, I'm hesitant, right? Like, so you might be falling on the kind of lower end of a continuum when you say, like, well, what is the reasonable amount of money for me to invest before I see a single dollar back? And I want to just validate the number zero as being completely acceptable amount of money that you're comfortable investing. You can spend $0 and you can decide. I mean, you're already not at zero because you have pursued quite a bit of education and you're here, which tells us that you have done, one certification, two certifications, right? Like you're here.
Right.
You are already in the PN community. You're already not at $0 invested in this venture. But when it comes to like ongoing expenses, platforms, software, tools, I think it is absolutely valid to say, I will just put everything on pause and I will run my business bare bones until I see some money from it, until I have two paying clients, until I have four paying clients. So I have talked about the bare bones stack for a while, where it's like if you have Gmail, if with which has email and Google Drive, right? When Google Docs and
And a
PayPal
scheduling app.
and a scheduling app now in Google, that's right. And
Mhm.
you have Zoom, or you could use Google, what is it called? Teams?
Meets,
Google Meet.
Google
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Meetings, something like
so
that. Yeah.
you notice we're talking about like a whole bunch of tools that are actually free and available for you to use. And PayPal is going to be a very easy, kind of like widely accepted, no monthly charge of any kind tool. I think the question that I would ask here, and this would apply to what tool do I use? How much money do I invest? How do I use landing pages? Is if you boil it down to what is it that I'm trying to do? What is the number one priority? Because your goal with a landing page is not to have a landing page. No one cares about a landing page. A landing page serves a purpose. It's to communicate to people what it is you do. You can do that in a Google Doc. You can do that in an email. You can do that in a text message, right? How can I communicate what it is I do? And you will figure out the landing page is kind of like down the road, but you notice what I'm encouraging you to do is to reprioritize things
Yeah.
in an order that actually put your primary goal primary. So you're not spending time tinkling with landing pages and figuring out tools where your number one priority is, where's my number one paying client? You with me?
Yeah.
What's that
I
land?
guess I was going off of the call from a couple of weeks ago, and he said, grow your email. And then, so I like had done an email, had done a blog. So I was like, okay, how can I grow my email list? And I was going to just send out like a freebie, like sign up for my freebie and get my email, but that's a whole nother process. So
Well, but then I would push back on that and say your goal is not to grow your email list or to create a freebie. Your goal is to get your first paying client, right?
absolutely.
So, and I think it's like we kind of have to go back to that, right? Like where a lot of those things will come into play for sure
Yeah.
eventually, but just maybe not yet or not right now. And sometimes we get kind of sucked into the how do I do this in the best possible way? So, a lot of folks I work with, they work on building an email list, and like we talk about like starting a newsletter, right? Or starting some sort of regular email communication. And there's a lot of noise we get into around like what platform do I use and how do I do that, and what about the opt-in form, and I've never created an opt-in form before. And I say we're going to send an email from your default email client, be it Gmail or whatever. You're going to use a BCC field. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Like where
Yeah.
you can just sort of copy and paste. You're going to send your first email to your entire email list, which is the one and only time you can do that, is that initial announcement of what it is you're doing, where you can kind of say, hey, everybody, Heather here. I'm doing this thing, super exciting, new path. I'm going to be sending out new emails here every week, once a month. Here's what you expect. Hit reply and let me know if you would like to receive those. And then you're going to get the replies. You're going to get 2, or you're going to get 22, or you're going to get 7. And that is your email list. And you now have an email list, and you now have an obligation to send them an email. How are you going to send them an email? You're going to create an email. You're going to put all of their emails into BCC, and you're going to write them an email. After you've written them an email, you can then go and research email platforms, and you can kind of figure out how to email but you notice how we're actually, again, we're reordering things in order of importance, where the very first thing you start doing the actual thing. Just like when we work with clients, we would want to help them start moving before we help them like optimize the movement and optimize the program and the periodized stages and exercises, right? So that way we can actually start seeing some progress, like some forward momentum. You with me?
Yeah. No, I like it. I'm trying to make it a little too complicated and go from like here to way up here, and I'm kind of
And I
skipping
think
the middle. Yeah.
this is so understandable. And I'm so glad you brought this up, because this is like every single person in this room is either experiencing it right now or has experienced it in the past, or is not there yet and is only considering this and will be experiencing it in a week, right? Or in a month, right? So I just want to also acknowledge how universal this is. This, like, I want to get it perfect. And you notice as soon as you dip your toes into like the information, like God save you if you've Googled, how to start an email list, because right, but that's
Yeah.
exactly it, right? And what a great reminder, because our clients, they Google what is the best diet and what is the best exercise program, and they're in like the same overwhelm, right? It's like, oh my God, like, where do I begin? Do I do this program or that program? Do I do keto? Like, I read this thing about keto. Meanwhile, you as their trainer, as the coach, you're like, oh my God, just go for a walk. Right? Like, let's start easy.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. And I'm probably just overcomplicating and overthinking it. And
Well, and often the question I would ask clients when they say, well, am I just overthinking it? Am I overcomplicating it? And I say, well, are you the kind of person to overthink and overcomplicate? And they start laughing. I was like, well, then probably yes.
oh yeah.
Additional question to ask is, do I find this complicated? If the answer is yes, then there's a strong chance that yes, you've added some additional elements that you do not need.
Yeah. No, makes total sense. I appreciate that. I like your insight.
Uh, for folks listening and for Heather as well, these are the type of conversations or kind of some of the issues that you'd brought forward are things that we definitely talk about in our coaching business Kickstarter course. Uh, if you enrolled within the last year or two, you're probably already signed up for the course as an addition to something that you paid for, either Pro Coach or L1 Nutrition, L1 SSR. CBK has been rolled into a bunch of those things, and you will likely get some information in the next few weeks about our next live session that I believe kicks off in March, but I have to confirm some of those dates. So Heather, if you're still kind of tussling with some of those things, or you feel like you can use some additional information at that point, feel free to jump into those live discussions, and we can get you a week by week playbook of the things that you can work on to try and make your life a little bit easier as you start out. Uh, Folks who are also here, and if you just joined us, we were talking about how are you adding or tackling some of the discomfort, some of the ickiness of behavior change, whether applying to your business or to your own personal development. What does that look like for you? And shared some amazing things that she is working on, including a dance competition that she is signed up for. Heather is working her way through the initial stages of business development. Do we have other folks here who are also kind of microdosing some of those things or macro?
I am.
What do you got for us, Anna? What are you working on?
Well, I just joined, as you know, the women's coaching group.
It was nice to see you yesterday in our orientation call.
Thank you. Thank you. And I am really fighting the instinct to withdraw just from because I have so much going on, and I know the right thing is for me to stay, and that's what I'm going to do. But I am meeting some serious resistance. It's intense. Yeah.
So, for folks who are unfamiliar, PN offers their own coaching groups. We have enrollments twice per year, once in January, once in July. Some of you, in addition to Anna, may be signed up currently or have done previous cohorts. Uh, One of the things that we mentioned yesterday, kind of as we were signing off yesterday, I was hoping that maybe you caught this part, and there was actually something I didn't mention that we ran out of time, and I saved it for a future date. Uh, we often talk about what happens when you kind of feel the water rising, when you feel stress is bubbling over, uh, and you need kind of a little bit of assistance. There are some things that we would always suggest as coaches. Before I share some stuff, coaches, if you were in not such, maybe not in the client seat, but potentially, but if you were in the coaching side of things, is there anything that you would offer to your client who is feeling the temptation to hit the road? Kate.
I love the question that you asked, and I would love to actually hear how folks respond to it, but I want to call out something about Anna's contribution specifically. Um, because based on what Anna shared with us today, if I were her coach, I wouldn't coach her here. Because if you all heard, Anna's not actually experiencing any ambivalence. Did you hear that? She said, I'm experiencing a lot of resistance, but I know it's the right thing for me to stay, and I will. Did you hear that? Right? So
Mhm.
the fact that Anna actually doesn't need our help here, she's sharing that, right? And I think that I just really wanted to call that out because we will hear that from clients where the client will kind of like bring a thing up, but at the same time they will bring this as like and it's fine now, or actually I figured this out, or I'm gonna do this anyway. But it can be really tempting to jump in and coach them anyway. Right? It's like, Anna, tell us about that discomfort and it's like, but there isn't any ambivalence. It's a yes and. She knows what she's gonna do. Anna, did I read that correctly? Because I do want you to correct me if I didn't, and actually you would welcome a little bit of coaching through the discomfort.
No, I think that's really smart. I'm dedicated to making some changes, and I'm just noticing that I think it's also important to really not try to sweep it under the rug and to embrace how one is feeling when they're facing change. How am I going to coach people who have these kinds of feelings if I don't really dive in, and say, what is this about? What does it feel like? I remember when I first started helping a woman open up her shoulders and open up her chest and lengthen the back of her neck. And we tend to curl around the heart to protect it sometimes. If we've had, just life after life thing, you sort of curl over. You see a lot of people doing this. And I saw this look on her face. She was like, "Oh, what are you doing?" And I said, I see that this is unsettling, and I'm here. I hear you, and I understand. I've also experienced that. It's normal. It's normal to experience this ah, side of
Yeah.
it.
And I would love to kind of take that where Jeremy leads us, because I do want to talk about like how do we coach a client through the resistance and maybe wanting to quit. But I just really wanted to emphasize that the way just Anna brought this to the table, and I know Anna's in these calls, and I love hearing what she brings to the table always. So I wanted, and I think I would do that with a client as well, where if a client shared that with me, I would highlight exactly the fact that, well, hey, I so appreciate you sharing with me. And it also sounds like you already know what you're going to do, right? Like affirming what I just heard them say, affirming their own confidence, because my God, how awesome to be in a space where it's like, ah, this is hard and I'm doing it anyway, and I am gonna do it anyway. I like really want to quit right now, but I'm not quitting because I know it's important, right? To just reflect that and say, you hear yourself like doing this awesome job that you're doing right now because it's pretty freaking awesome.
Oh, thank you, Kate. You're gonna make me cry. I it's awful. And as you're speaking, I think maybe it's actually a gift. It's really an opportunity to develop better understanding and compassion. So I really appreciate that. Oh, it is Anna, by the way. I know
Anna, thank you for
everybody,
correcting me.
of
It's Anna
course.
with an A, of course.
Yes. Oh, thank you so much.
We'll circle back for a second here. Assuming that Anna didn't give us that additional feedback, a chance for coaches here to practice kind of how do you handle that conversation. Uh, Along with Anna, we have in any of our enrollments, there's going to be a number of people. If you're coaching a group between 250 and 500 people, there will be a section of those folks, a percentage, be it a small percentage of folks who will kind of have a similar experience to Anna and immediately feel that resistance bubble up within day one or day two of the program. Whereas you as a coach, like, we haven't really done anything yet. We haven't really dug into the program. You haven't gotten to experience it, but it is a concern that you need to be able to tackle. So for coaches who are working in a more one-on-one setting, you might have someone who uh, you've done the initial consult with them, you've gone through maybe the first check-in, and they possess a similar level of resistance. They haven't really had an opportunity to try and implement anything, but they're already kind of digging in their heels. So it's a conversation that I think is worth practicing. Uh, if coaches have already experienced that, I'm curious to know what strategies do you use to guide that conversation? I will say from the coaching side, it is an inherently uncomfortable conversation to have. I'm sure it is on the client side as well. But that idea as a coach where it's like, well, I've just gone on this roller coaster of emotions where I saw my notifications pop up and someone said, hey, I want to work on coaching with you. Uh, you've set aside time, you've invested in them a little bit to have that conversation. You feel like there's an initial connection there and you've laid out how you could potentially help that person. It's day one or day two or day three of that program, and that person says, I think I want to bail. It is certainly its own roller coaster of emotions. Kate, I know you've coached this program. It's been a few years since you were a coach in PN coaching and the big group stuff, but you do your own groups. I'm curious to know if you've tackled that with any of the groups that you coach.
I think, well, the program that Anna was referring to, which is a larger group, I would actually I would send a group email a couple of weeks in saying something along the lines of, you want to quit yet? And that actually slapped people in the face pretty good. It was really funny because I would get these responses along the lines of like, did you just read my mind? Right? And that might seem like a very risky email to send because, of course, a bunch of people haven't thought of quitting. But the thing is, people who haven't thought of quitting, that email just doesn't resonate with them. They just sort of read it and move on. Right? But for people who it really resonates with, it actually can be really, really effective. Now, the takeaway here for folks that are coaching one-on-one or coaching really small group is that what if we were to just say it out loud? What if we were to just actually address it before it becomes a thing? And you'll go on intuition here a little bit. Maybe there is a bit of an engagement drop, right? Or maybe you've worked with a couple of people and you're like, 3 weeks in seems to be like at this sticky spot. You notice when Anna shared this with us, where are we? We're end of January. It's 3 weeks into the new year. It's the 3 weeks into the thing, right? Like, so that might be a little bit of a sticky thing where you send out a reminder, you send out an email, you send out a preemptive, like, hey, I just wanted to acknowledge that we're 3 weeks into the new year. And I don't know about you, but I know a lot of people find this spot really hard because it's been 3 weeks, but we might not be seeing result. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, you're actually
Mhm.
explicitly speaking to the thing. And that makes folks feel really heard and understood.
The visual that I get when you bring this one up is kind of like uh, getting caught with your hand in the cookie jar. It's it's a little bit of kind of on the client side, it evokes a feeling of kind of I'm being singled out, or there's a slight bit of shame towards it, even that I had considered this idea. So as you mentioned, yeah, there are some folks who are going to read that and be like, "This is not for me." Didn't consider it for a moment. But there will be a decent percentage of folks, especially in larger group programs, that will feel that like I feel bad for even having considered it, and then having the coach shine a light on it addresses it in a really kind of low pressure, tongue in cheek way that lets that client know, hey, you're not the first person who has had anxiety or trepidation about making change. You're pretty much the same human being that everyone who has ever considered change has at some point thought about, uh, is this really for me? Is this worth it? Do I want this bad enough? All of those feelings in that inner conflict that is part of the change process. Calling it out early lets people know that one, this is usual. And then additionally, in that message, you can also share what pathways for that client to connect with you and to hammer out some of those things that may be causing some of that anxiety. So whether it's the current thing that I'm doing just doesn't feel sustainable, the current thing I'm doing requires too much of my resources, time, effort, money, whatever it is. And then you can have that conversation in a more real way as opposed to letting it kind of fester in the background unaddressed and hoping that we never have to get there. Hoping that something doesn't happen is typically not a great strategy for preventing that thing from happening. Coaches here, if you've either worked in a group setting or had one-on-one folks, if you have any additional strategies that you found to be particularly useful as a coach delivering to a client or as a client receiving from your coach, what does that sound like? Actually, Kate, now that you mentioned that, I had this exact conversation with KSD about month 4 or 5 of the original L2 in 2015. And I had sent something in a message where she'd mentioned it was getting hard, and yeah, this is where it's like the rubber really meets the road. And I remembered being like, I don't know if I have the time for this. Spoiler note, I was a single man in my 20s with no responsibilities. I had so much time for this. Uh, but yeah, just being able to address it with the coach really felt like taking that boot off my neck. And I was like, okay, I can do this thing.
Well, I'm actually really curious to hear um, from folks, what would you want from the client perspective? So forget being a coach for a second. You're a client. You're a client in a program. You are in a group coaching program. You're working with a coach one-on-one, and then you're feeling resistance. You're feeling like you want to quit. Consider the last thing you quit or wanted to quit and didn't. How would you want the coach to approach it, to handle it? Like, what would feel supportive to you? Jeremy, what was the last thing you wanted to quit?
I mean, I'm sure I've quit many things since 2015, but I remember that specific interaction. And the way that you phrase this question is actually really useful for remembering, in that all I actually really wanted was in this large group program, I wanted the attention of the coach. It felt like I was doing all the things, and I felt like yes, it was useful, it was great, but what I wanted was someone to tell me that you're doing an okay job. I just wasn't getting specific enough feedback to know if I was hitting the mark, and it felt like it was becoming less useful. And really, what I wanted was just that message from the coach saying, "Hey, I think you're doing a great job. If nothing changes going forward, keep doing what you're doing, and I'll let you know if you need to do something differently." I just, yeah, just needed that light touch. I didn't actually need strategies to do anything differently. I just needed someone to speak with me.
I think
And
those
was
are all like really valid points, because I feel like when you're in a job, like a job, and you're working for people, you get that validation, you get that communication and feedback. And so as a coach, especially in my positions just starting out, you're not getting any feedback from any office work or any clients. Or same thing as a client, if you're just starting out and you're not seeing that progress, whether it's on the scale or in the way you feel, or in your clothes or whatever, you need that validation from the coach. So I think addressing that, like knowing it's coming and addressing it, is a genius idea, because everybody experiences that, like the lull after the motivation and the excitement kind of goes down a little bit. They need that like push. I think that's a really great approach.
Well, and I think what I want to point out here, we're actually kind of talking about two different points in the coaching journey as well, because we are talking about like, checking in regularly and giving affirmation of progress. There are a couple of comments there that I see, like, I want to be reminded that my progress is perfect, that belief in me, that I can do the thing. Like, a lot of them read as good coaching. Like we should just do that by default. And hopefully we do that as coaches. And hopefully we receive that as clients, right? So I think the 2 points in the coaching journey that I want to acknowledge is that on one hand, there is this early on expectation, like what is the coaching relationship going to look like? How often am I going to give you feedback? How often am I going to reply, to make sure that you feel supported and heard and seen? And that's an ongoing thing. But then there is another point. The point, for whatever reason, when the client wants to quit and the coach finds out about it, maybe Anna messages the coach and says, "Hey, I'm actually thinking of quitting this program." Then there is an opportunity for the coach to do some repair, because the indication of, I think I want to quit, I don't think this is for me, I don't feel support, like whatever the reason might be, that creates like where one partner in a relationship is saying, hey, this is not working for me. And this is where the other partner in the relationship, we're talking about a coach-client relationship, can then take steps towards repair. Tell me more. How can I help? How can I support you? Like, will you actually take steps for repair? So in Jeremy's example of being in a program where he really just wanted a little bit of attention, right? And Jeremy, we don't know how that unfolded necessarily, but for you to be in that position of just wanting a little bit of attention and like knowing that like, yes, you're doing well. If you've emailed the person, the program, the client care and said, hey, I feel like I'm not getting into any individual attention here and I'm actually considering opting out, then the key becomes, what's the response?
Mhm.
Right? Are you being kind of bounced off? Or are you actually being heard with that concern? And that concern is truly being addressed and some repair is taking place.
Right. I mean, if I think back to that moment and I get an auto response from client care, or even an auto response that's like tagged by the coach's name, where it doesn't feel like they've actually listened to my concerns, chances are I leave that program. Whereas if there's a moment there where, yeah, it feels like it's strengthening that connection, it feels like I'm being seen, uh, and kind of handled a little bit more like a human as opposed to a number, then that changes things dramatically. And it also helps to uh, further my own confidence in the program, my belief in the program, and my belief in myself, as some folks pointed out in the chat as well. Heather, there was something that you said there where you noticed that it's like, if I am not kind of the client receiving coaching, or if I'm the coach who does not have clients yet, how do I seek out that validation? I think a large part of it is coming to spaces like this, sharing in these conversations, getting feedback from your peers is incredibly validating. It lets you know that not only am I someone who's just like hanging my shingle on a door and waiting for clients to appear, I'm practicing my skills as well, engaging in these conversations, with us in this community. If you have other coaching communities that you're a part of as well, I would seek those out and look to be kind of uh, a visible voice there. Hanging out in the background, for folks who are hanging out in the background, it's great. You will hopefully pick up some stuff by osmosis, but gaining coaching skill often is not a passive thing that you absorb through a book or through listening to podcasts. It happens when you engage with other humans. Kate, you got something?
Well, I just always remember like when folks are in school uh, for therapy, right, to become a therapist, it's actually mandatory that you enroll in therapy. That's part of the program. When you become a therapist, part of the program is that you are actually in therapy yourself, receiving therapy. Now, coaching is not as regulated field yet as therapy, but I think that would be kind of a nice practice to have, right? Like if you are aiming to become a coach, if you are working towards being a coach, do you have experience being coached? It blows my mind how I have been doing this for decade and a half, and then I work with a new strength coach. I work with a new running coach to me as a client, right? As a runner, as a lifter, and how much I get from that experience above and beyond the actual lifting and running. Because there is this like double layer happening. I always call it out in my Coaches Connect calls. I call it like the meta coaching because we talk about a thing, but we also talk about how to coach a thing, right? Like there is that extra layer. So when I'm working with a coach, not only I'm getting my workouts from them or I'm getting my runs from them, but I also observe how they coach me and I observe how I am coached by them. I observe my own reactions. I observe, I'm feeling a little abandoned here because they didn't wish me luck on my 5K on the Saturday, right? Like, this is interesting, right? So hear me being a client in a client seat. Okay, noted. I don't want to do that as a coach. Right? That is so incredibly valuable to kind of be in that seat and just be like both a fly on the wall and being the actual actor and an observer.
Sorry, Kate. Question, because I don't know if I've ever experienced someone else doing this, and I always thought I was just a weirdo for doing this. Do you actually tell the coach, hey, this is the thing, this is the interaction that we had, and here's what I appreciated about it?
That's a great question. uh, I do that with select folks that I know can receive it.
Mhm.
If that makes sense, right? Like so, and what I see, oof, this is not a rabbit hole I expected. So thanks for that, Jer. Uh, I feel like the folks that I have worked with in the field, and I'm talking like as a client, right? So I'm
Mhm.
mostly talking about movement coaches. So like running, lifting, strength training, stuff like that. Um, I'm seeing a bit of a divide where some folks are technicians. They're
Right.
there to give me the workouts. Hear the workouts. Cool. They're not necessarily I'm going to give that feedback to. It's also not my role because I'm not a mentor,
Right.
right? Like I'm a client. This is where I'm just like, I shut up and I do my workouts. But there are some coaches that I work with that are actually more than technicians. They're what I call like they're the artisans of their craft. They're coach obsessed. They're like my people. Like I'm coaching obsessed. Like I think of coaching in the shower. Like this is, I don't know what you guys think about in the shower, don't tell me. But then I can give them that feedback because we can geek out on that together. Does that make sense, right? Like because like
Yeah,
if
100%.
that relationship and rapport is there, right? And the dynamic is not weird, right? Like because like, well, I mentor coaches as my day gig, but now I'm your client, and right, like there's a bit of a power dynamic, little switcheroo happening. As long as we can kind of figure that out, then yeah, that's a super fun conversation to have.
Fair enough. And yeah, I had never considered that other people might do it as well, especially other coaches. But I can pick up like at least a few instances where I've engaged in something where I was learning from someone else, and the way that they handled an interaction with me was especially good coaching, in my opinion. And after, as I'm saying goodbye or saying thank you, I'll let them know, hey, that thing that you mentioned there, that was particularly useful. And I found that really valuable. And I'll thank them for that thing. And it is me very much filtering that engagement through my coach brain. And I was like, ooh, that was good coaching there. Because as coaches, we notice it, or at least when it aligns with what your vision of good coaching is or your experience of having high quality coaching. I think it's also nice to move through the world and be able to appreciate other people with various skill sets to be like, you did a good thing here, and give someone their flowers kind of in the moment, whether they know it or not. Maybe that was just kind of their default setting. I don't know if they put any actual brain power into it, but when you see good coaching out in the world without it being prompted or anything like that, I find it very invigorating. And we're also up on time for today. That discussion kind of took a lot of twists and turns. Thank you, folks, for getting uncomfortable with us. It is at the heart of the behavior change process. If you are looking to see improvement, seeking out some measure of discomfort may let you know you're on the right path. So for folks who are actively engaged in that right now, that is fantastic. If this conversation made you a little bit uncomfortable, you're welcome. We have our next call coming up next week at, give me 1 second, next week, Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern. Hope to see you there. Thank you for joining. Take care, gang.